Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy weekend. Back with another knife review. Today I'm going to be looking at the Curtis knives. This is the F3 medium in a Spanto blade configuration. Curtis knives, another kind of recommendation from one of my friends. Kind of trying to update me, get me into 2022 with what knives are out there. These are classified as Curtis custom knives, and they are custom made, but the only thing that is not custom is actually the hardware, which is still sourced out. So other than that, I mean, this is probably the closest that I have to a custom, and we're going to get into some of the details, pros and cons. To be completely honest with you, I've had this knife for about a month and a half now, and I have carried it quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure I got this right. It wasn't one of these knives that I was just like, I'll see what happens when I carry it for a day. Like, I definitely wanted to take my time with this knife, and I am really impressed. So we're gonna take a look at it, go over the pros and cons. All right, the details on this Curtis, it has a 7 3/4 inch overall length. It's sporting a 3 1/4 inch blade length. Again, we covered it has this Spanto, so spear point / tanto, which not a huge fan of, just because you get a different grind from here to here and then here to here. But I mean, it is what it is. It has a, titanium handles all around. This knife is running on bearings too. So in 2022, this thing's, definitely, top of the market there. The version that I have is MagnaCut steel, which I realize is the new hotness. To be completely honest with you, I've never, grabbed like an L-Max and been like, oh man, this is so much worse than MagnaCut, or, vice versa. But this steel, I know that it is, very sought after. People buy knives because of the steel, so that's kind of cool. This does have a $650 MSRP if you can find one, and we'll get right into the pros. The first pro for me is that I look at this knife as like an all-around winner, and why I kind of, I wouldn't say that I postponed, but I definitely wanted to get my stuff in order, we'll say, before reviewing this. But I view this knife as an all-around winner, right? Like, the size, having that 3 1/4 inch blade, the fit and finish, the materials. Like, I love titanium. Similarly to other knives I've reviewed, such as the Sharp by Design Tempest. Like, the closer I looked at this knife, the more I was like, man, like, they really looked into the intricate details of this knife, and the end product is absolutely astonishing. There is weight reduction or like cutouts in the frame, so I mean, as far as titanium knives go, this thing's pretty light. I didn't actually end up grabbing the weight of it, but super light. I've carried this in my pocket for a long time. I don't have a bad thing to say about the weight or anything from that standpoint. The next pro for me is the action on this. It's very fidget friendly, which is awesome. And I kind of thought, like, so I do have like the non-flipper version, obviously, and I thought, man, like, I'm really gonna want this thing to be a flipper, like, because I do, like, I certainly fidget with my knives, whether I'm at like my desk at work, out in the field, whatever. Like, I love a knife that is fun, like the action when it locks up. I don't know, it kind of draws like an emotional response to me. This one definitely does that, and I thought, I mean, for a while I was like, man, I'm gonna write, Curtis and be like, hey, what'll it take to get a new blade on this thing that's a flipper? But I do respect it. Like, it's in 2022. It's not another flipper. It doesn't have like a Spidey hole, that like Strider hole that I talk about, whatever. But I mean, it is super comfortable to mess with, and I actually really like it. I think aesthetically, this knife is absolutely beautiful. For a while I thought, all I was missing on here was the flipper tab, which they do make a flipper version of this. It isn't the version that I got, but I think I'm good with this one. Like, I really do like it. I kind of, it's not another flipper. Like, this is a, non-flipper. You got to use this little, cutout here, but I I really like it. The next pro for me is going to be this Chamfered Lock Bar, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know that that's kind of near and dear to me. I really like the way that they beveled it. It's not sharp or anything like that. You know, it's doesn't tear apart my thumb. You know, I really like that, especially for a knife of this price point. The next pro for me is going to be the Choil, which Curtis did a great job. I mean, it's not as pronounced as, say, like a Strider or a Spyderco, where it's just like, I mean, those are like knives built around choils, which isn't a bad thing at all. But this choil is exceptionally usable, and although there isn't like, you know, there's not jimping way up high on the blade, it's still like I have confidence in that I'm, you know, not going to nick my finger on the lower part of the blade, as I've talked about. You know, there's various grips here that will work for everyday tasks. So I definitely think that that is a pro and certainly worth mentioning. The next pro for me is going to be the fact that this blade is MagnaCut, which, you know, I mean, even I was trying to track down McNee's, like their 3.5 inch the other day on DLT trading. Missed out on the drop, which I mean, I couldn't be super mad about, but MagnaCut is kind of the hotness right now, and all the things that I'm, you know, realizing I'm not a, you know, metallurgy expert or anything like that. I know that this is kind of the hotness right now, and I do see that. I mean, it's sharp as hell. Like, it definitely seems to hold an edge better than most of the knives that I have. I'm really impressed with it, and I think, like, in 2022, like, I mean, looking at a classic design that has all the features you'd want for this time and age, like, this is a great look for that. So the MagnaCut steel, like, I love how it's bead blasted, but then there's like this contrast like in between here, so this like flipper hole, whatever you want to call it, and then the blade itself. You know, it's definitely, it's bead blasted. There's like a really good like contrast between the top and the bottom of the blade. Like, this thing is beautiful. Like, it's kind of like you know, certainly form and function piece, and I definitely appreciate that. It's kind of refreshing. The last pro for me is going to be the pocket clip, which part of the pocket clip is actually a con for me, and we'll get to that in a second. But as far as carrying this thing, I couldn't ask for more. I mean, I know wire clips are kind of coming back with Spydercos and things of, you know, along those lines, but this clip is really, really comfortable. It is right hand carry only, but I love how it has 2 torque screws holding it in, plus it's countersunk. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this thing is going to, you know, hold up. It's not going to get loose. I know some of the older Spydercos, I would always get annoyed with them getting loose or spinning, etc. This thing, I mean, you have 2 screws plus this clip being countersunk. I mean, she's not going anywhere, and that's really nice to see. They definitely put a lot of thought into this design. All right, now that we've covered the pros, I wanted to get into a couple cons of this knife, which it kind of hurts me because I do, like, I love this knife. I think, and we'll get to this in the conclusion, like, I really do think that this could be your only knife. But as far as cons go, I feel like the blade stock, so this has a very fat spine to it. I think for this size knife, which again we're looking at 3 1/4, you really want slicing to be at the top of the list. Like, you're not going to do much chopping or anything like that. This has a very thick spine to it, which I think kind of makes it lose points. I'm going to be reviewing my large Inkosi here in a little bit, and I mean, that one, just the stock is a lot smaller. It feels more slicier. This one's kind of a smaller knife that wants to be everything, and so instead of like picking a lane, they were like, oh, we'll throw, you know, a huge spine on this knife and then like a smaller handle, smaller blade, and it's a little mismatched, to be honest with you. The next con for me is the jimping on this, which, especially on the front here, so this is like, it's very intense. Like, it almost reminds me of like a metal saw, and pretty deep. So it's a very deep sawtooth design that, you know, your thumb is, you know, meant to deal with. And if you really bear down on this, which I have, it kind of punishes you by being really sharp. Like, the harder that I bear down on this thing, I lose a little bit of confidence, but I gain a ton of like pain with this thing. Like the more I drive into it, the more painful it is. So I would have just liked to see a little more like subtle jimping on this. It is what it is, and that's been actually like one of the most fascinating things about reviewing knives, like especially higher end knives, is everyone does jimping differently. There's not like a one size fits all kind of thing, but for this one, like I don't know. I mean, like the intended audience has to be an EDC person. This is the only knife they have. They're not going to be gloved when they use it, and I just feel like if I really had to bear down on this, like you kind of get punished for it. And light stuff, whatever, light work, using the choil, choking up, whatever, you're not going to feel it. But if you really try to bear down on this thing, you're going to feel it. It will remind you that what you're doing, maybe you should get a different knife to do it. All right, the next con for me is, and I kind of wrestled with this one, but it has what I would describe as a very spongy lock bar. It's kind of like creaky. The lock bar is super easy to activate, which again, I appreciate. The Medford MIDI that I have that I reviewed was, kind of tough, kind of sharp, whatever. But this one almost like if you keep pressure on the blade, and I'm going to try to actually get it to so you can hear it here, but it's kind of like creaky. I don't know if you can hear that, but I don't know. It just like, and I get it. Like, I mean, you could totally like oil it, clean it, whatever. I mean, this thing's brand new, but at the same time, like the lock bar on this is very flexible. Like the only thing keeping it from me pushing it super far out is this pocket clip, which I thought was weird. Like, I mean, it definitely doesn't have a lock bar stabilizer or anything like that. I'm confident, again, like I'm sure they thought of that and it won't be an issue, but it was just a little bit weird compared to the other knives that I own, is just like how spongy feeling this lock bar is. I don't know, just something worth mentioning. All right, the next con for me is this lanyard hole, actually, which again, I'm not a huge lanyard guy through knives. I mean, if a Chris Reeve comes with it, I'll normally run with it, but I'm not putting lanyards on knives that are this big. The lanyard here, I don't know, like the lanyard hole it's so small that you definitely couldn't sneak 550 cord through it, I don't think, unless you took kind of the inner strands out and just kind of left like the casing for it. I don't know if anyone has any experience with that, but along the same lines as like, if you put something on a knife, make sure it's useful. Like 90% of people that are throwing a lanyard on a knife are running 550 cord. So if you're going to put a lanyard hole, make it so it can accept 550 cord. I mean, anything other than that, I'm kind of searching in my junk drawer for like what will fit in here and not be ridiculous. Again, I'm not going to use the lanyard hole, but I thought that was kind of interesting in this case. You definitely could not squish 550 cord through that lanyard hole. All right, the last con for me is going to be the pocket clip, actually, and like this logo here, which, realizing that Curtis Knives, like they kind of use this like reticle, this very basic like hunting reticle is their symbol. Like, I mean, it shows face on the box right here, whatever, but I don't know, like I kind of, for this knife and this price point, and again, like the logo is super, I mean, it's like in script, like, Curtis, like I really do like that. I just don't know where the reticle fits into this whole thing. And I would have liked to see, like, I love the skeletonized clip. I think that's awesome. Again, like in 2022, we're definitely getting back to wire clips kind of being the thing, but I don't know. Like, I kind of struggle with that reticle logo. I don't get it. Maybe I don't know the backstory with it, but it seems like a little much, and it's just kind of like weird to me. Like it would have been easier to just like, delete that, have it a normal wire clip, 2 stanchions, that's it. I would have liked to see that, but realizing that people want to kind of put their brand, their name on this, I guess I kind of get it, but to that same end, I mean, you have this like F3 logo right here. You flip it over, you have Curtis, and then you have this reticle clip. So I don't know. I didn't need all of that. Like I doubt anyone. Like I mean, there's probably 5 people in the world that would see this in my pocket and be like, oh man, he's got a Curtis F3 medium. Like that's dope. So for all the rest of us, I don't know. Like I think like they could have made it a little more subtle, and I would have appreciated it more. All right, and in conclusion, like I really do think that this knife, so the F3, the Curtis F3 medium, it's an all-around winner. You get beauty plus brawn here. I mean, this is a gorgeous knife. It looks great anywhere it is, and I really do think that this can back it up. When you kind of get into that whole, and I would categorize it if you had to pick two, so a Strider versus a Chris Reeve, like you kind of have to make a choice, right? Like, are you looking for, brains or brawn? Brains being Chris Reeve, brawns being Strider. I think this is a really good mix of the two, and I would categorize this as like the G wagon of titanium folders that are out there today. Like it's kind of understated, it's classy, but it's open for business. Like I mean, similarly to a G wagon, right? Like I mean, you got mall cruisers, you got moms rolling around with it, but yet it has a front, mid, and rear locking diff. Like that's this thing. It looks great, but it can it can back it up for sure. And I think with that, what comes up is, could this be your only knife? And I think in 2022, this 100% could be your only EDC knife. And obviously, I'm a huge Strider S&G fanboy, Strider writ large, but I don't know. Like, I think if you're looking for something that's current, classic, classy, this thing has all the features that are available in 2022 in a package that is, very appealing to the eyes. We're not kind of looking at an eyesore like the Spyderco Shaman, which I've reviewed, realizing this is twice the price of that. If you had to pick one knife, like I really do think all around, this is a great way to go. It's kind of a combination, and I was wrestling with this a little bit, but it is kind of a really good combination between like, the burliness of a Strider and the finesse of, your Chris Reeve Nkosi or Sebenza. I think it's a great mix of those. Even more so, like I would take this over certainly a Hinder XM18, which I need to get to review at some point, which is kind of what I look at as like the child between a Strider SNG and a large Nkosi. But I think this is a real winner, and if you have it kind of in you, if you have the funds to be able to buy one of these, I couldn't say anything better about this thing. Like I'm really happy with it. It was a brand that I had never heard of, but I'm really glad that I got into it, and honestly, I'm excited to see what it can do. So, till next time, appreciate you tuning in.